Hello, this is Reed Stout from Rex Game Studios, and I'm here to talk about Project Dome, and we're on episode 3 of our video. And today we're going to be focusing on the build mode of Project Dome. There's quite a bunch of material that goes with this, so we're only going to cover the first part of it, and we'll probably cover several videos, but kind of gives you an idea of where the game is going and so forth. So let's get started on that. But before I do that, and one thing I want to make sure everybody understands, and kind of like a little disclaimer here, is what we're about ready to share in this video can and will likely change. We're always making updates and changes to our spec designs and ideas, different ideas coming down the road, but this kind of gives you a view of where we're headed with this particular proof of concept and so forth. If you haven't seen any of the videos in the past, you're wondering, well, what is Project Dome? Well, it's kind of like a real-time strategy game, very similar to Civilization. So you have like a map in front of you. It's not a very large map. It's not like you're in a first-person shooter type game, but it's a real-time strategy type game. It's the state of Oklahoma, where you'll be creating units, and you'll be chasing storms, and you'll be warning communities about those storms and trying to save lives. So unlike real-time strategy games where you're trying to blow up things, you're actually trying to save people's lives. So that's kind of what Project Dome is. And Project Dome is a proof of concept. So that's where we start the process of building the game, improving the different aspects of the game that we want to include into it. It's not the full game, but it kind of gives you a close view of what the game's going to look like over time. The things we want to talk about a little bit today is the build flow or the build mode. Last video we did in episode 2, we talked about two modes, the storm mode and the build mode. This video is on specifically the build mode, and we're going to look at the high-level buildings that you need to create to be able to do what you need to do so that you can make those accurate forecasts, warnings, and alerts to save lives out there. And this kind of gives you a kind of a informal view or grid or flow chart of the different buildings that come out of there and so forth. So let's look at the first primary building, and that's the headquarters. You only get one of these, and you have to place this in a primary city, either in Oklahoma City or Tulsa or Lawton or anywhere across the state of Oklahoma. And it's from there you will build a builder unit, and those builder units are used to create other buildings throughout the state of Oklahoma. So they'll have to move to those different areas. So if you build something in Oklahoma City, you have to create a builder unit and move it to Tulsa if you want to build something there. Once that builder unit builds that building or that structure, it dissipates. So you have to create new builder units to be able to keep building more facilities and so forth. It's from the headquarters that we start building other offices. And one of the most important offices is called the tech office or the tech center. And you can have more than one of these anywhere across the state of Oklahoma. It's very important that you do. And it's in there that you actually hire what we call virtual engineers. These virtual engineers are going to be used, or kind of like cash, so to speak, that are used to generate and develop your equipment and develop your tech, so to speak. The more engineers you have actually speeds up the development process and the research development. So you'll have like a tech research tree, and from there you will branch off and you will research different types of sciences and meteorology and so forth. And from there it will allow you to have access to different types of units and equipment that you can build or research that you will be able to use in the field to forecast severe weather and issue warnings. From there, we have what we call the services offices, and kind of, again, you'll have multiple of these across the state of Oklahoma. You will definitely want to have these because it's kind of like your unit that fixes things, so to speak, or it's kind of like a service unit where you would take your vehicle to get it worked on. You create a service unit from these offices, and they go out and they fix your equipment. So if you have a radar that goes down at one of your forecast offices, it will go out. You have to create a service unit. It goes out, fixes that radar dish, and puts it back online. Or if, for example, you have storm chasing vehicles and they're in the area and you want to get them repaired because you got to keep them repaired to be able to keep them going, you'll bring them to one of those service units offices and it will fix it at that point in time. It's really where you would do servicing and repairs and upgrades to all kinds of vehicles or buildings or equipment. That's where your services offices are. The next building is probably one of the most important buildings, because even though all of them are important, this one's very critical because it has a limited coverage of range. So when you create a forecast office, it doesn't cover the whole state. You have to create multiple forecast offices, so it covers a whole region of that state. But this is really where it all comes together. This is where you receive forecasts. If you click on your forecast office, you'll see the weather conditions in that area. You'll be able to see, if you click on the radar in there, you'll be able to see the radar scope of that region. You'll be able to communicate with what we call virtual forecasters, who will give you recommendations based upon the parameters of what the possibility of severe weather for that region is. You'll receive communication in from the public, from law enforcement, from ham radio operators, from storm observers and chasers. You'll be able to communicate back to them through the forecast office, and it's from there where you will issue warnings and alerts for that coverage area. So you're going to need to have these offices spread out throughout the entire state of Oklahoma. You'll have to have more than one of those. So it's very crucial. And again, you'll have to hire virtual forecasters and observers so that you can do these certain kinds of procedures in this area. You can have a forecast office, but if you don't have any forecasters or observers or radar operators, then you're not going to be able to perform some of these procedures. The next is the Emergency Management Office, and this is where you save lives. Again, it's very similar to the Forecast Office because it has a limited coverage area, so you'll need to have several of these in different cities across the state. And it's here where you will talk to city officials prior to when the upcoming severe weather events to occur. You will use it to alert them and get the emergency management system in place, and to get the search and rescue ready so that if a community is hit by severe weather in that coverage area, you'll be able to send them out to be able to help and rescue lives if that's the case. So this branch and this office is extremely important, just as many as all the others are. And there's other offices and buildings that we'll be talking about later on in different roads, but this kind of gives you a high-level view of what's going on and where we're heading with this particular game in the build mode per se. Again, like we said the storm mode is where the real action takes place, and you're issuing warnings and alerts, and you're talking to people back and forth, and you're trying to save lives. The build mode is where you're putting all this together, and you're upgrading and strategizing how you want to cover the area most effectively. So now let's get to your questions. And again, we've had some great questions, and we're greatly appreciative of everybody sending their questions in to us. So let's look at it. We only have a few this time that we're going to cover. So let's look at the first question. This is from Twitter. It's from FreakShow91V2, and he asked, if it's paid, what would be the determined price? Like $30, $60, $20, or $40? Well, right now that is a great question, and we really can't answer that at this moment because obviously we're not in a place where we can release the game. I'm thinking closer to when we get to the alpha or beta version of the game, we'll have a better idea of how much we're going to charge for the game. If we end up charging for the game may be free, but the upgrades may have like a microtransaction associated with them. There's a lot of things we're deciding upon down the road, and maybe a combination of both things. But right now our main focus is on the asset development and the game itself, and finalizing a lot of the flow of the game and how it's going to perform. So great question, but we're not going to be able to really answer this one right now at this point in time. Next question is from Jay Power. Jay Power has done a lot of questioning. He's asked us a lot of questions, and great questions in the back. He says, this is a pretty average question, but what progress, at least since the last video has been made on Project Dome? Well, we've been working on some of the assets last time we did a video. We showed some of the design art of the Joe Mobile and the Paxton Mobile, and the Toto Dorothy / Dorothy tornado module and so forth. And so we've been working on that. We also showed throughout this past month, we showed some examples or concepts of models of the vehicle that Bill Paxton drove. And the Twister movie and so forth. So we're in the process of building those. We're also in the process of designing, what these buildings are going to look like and what the units are going to be included with, and also we are finishing the design specs, or the design features and specs and flows of this game. So once those assets and things have been in the flows have been completed, we will be getting into the main core of the development. So we don't have a deadline at this point in time. A lot of us are working different jobs, so we're kind of doing this on our free time. Outside of that right now, we're hoping that in this next year, our company itself will be able to transition more towards full-time on this. But until we get to that point, it's going to take a little bit of time to get to some of the levels that you're asking for. Next question, and again, that was a great question from Jonathan Mullins. My first question is it ever going to be released, and it has been years since the game was announced? Well, that's correct. If you go back to our first video, we give quite a detailed view of why this game has taken so long to be in development. And I'm not going to rehash that here, but I really recommend that you go back to that video and take a look at it and check it out and see what the history of this game is. The point of the matter is we are going to get this game done, and we are working on it very hard, trying to get all the assets that we need together to move forward on a very rapid progression of getting it done. That's the reason why we're focusing specifically on proof of concepts and not a whole game, because it's a lot more smaller, bite-sized chunk of what could become later on down the road. And we think by the time we come to the main game itself, we'll be in a better position to be able to put more full-time and more staff on the game itself. Great question, though, Jonathan. Our next question is from Chase Wilson, who also has been a regular in asking questions. Thanks again, Chase. In this question, he asked, in Project Dome, will you have the choice to have different wavelengths on different radars? For example, starting radar as an X-band, short range, and so on and so on. That's a great question, and yes, the answer is yes to that. You will have different types of bands and radars that you'll be using and so forth that you'll be starting out with. We're doing a lot of research on that now. That's another thing about this game that takes some time, is research on all the technology that's out there, so we can include the research that's real to this game onto this game. So yes, the answer is yes to that, and it will be coming out with all those kinds of details and so forth. All right, well, we want to thank you all for the great questions and for watching this video. This one's a little bit shorter this time. We've been trying to make them a little bit shorter, so but we feel that they're very important. And we want to let you know that if you have any questions, feel free to continue to ask your questions using the Ask StormQuest tag. And if you're on Facebook, join us on the on the StormQuest group that we have. It's actually StormQuest Game Group. That way you can get more insight into the progress of the game, and that will grow into other things down the road as we get closer to the alpha and beta versions of the game and so forth. Talking about our next video that will be coming up here, we are going to break down other buildings and units and how you create them and so forth when we get to our next episode. And we'll be taking a break in our next video, and we won't be doing another one until February 2008. So we want to thank you for watching us and being faithful to staying with us. And we hope you have a great holiday season, and we'll see you next year. Thank you.